Hendricks began to scratch in the ash. Tasso stood by him, watching the motion of the rock. Hendricks was sketching a crude lunar map. This is the Apennine Range. Here is the crater of the Archimedes. The moon base is beyond the end of the Apennine, about 200 miles. I don't know exactly where, no one on Terra knows. But when you're over the Apennine, with one red flare and a green flare, followed by 2 red flares in quick succession, the base monitor will record your signal. The base is under the surface, of course. They'll guide you down with magnetic controls. And the controls, I can operate them. The controls are virtually automatic. All you have to do is give the right signal at the right time. I will. The seat absorbs most of the takeoff shock. Air and temperature are automatically controlled. The ship will leave Terra and pass out into free space. It'll line itself up with the moon, falling into an orbit around it, about 100 miles above the surface. The orbit will carry you over the base. When you're in the region of the Apennine, release the signal rockets. Tasso slid into the ship and lowered herself into the pressure seat. The arm locks folded automatically around her. She fingered the controls. Too bad you're not going, Major. All is put here for you and you can't make the trip. Leave me the pistol. Tasso pulled the pistol from her belt. She held it in her hand, weighing it thoughtfully. Don't go too far from this location. It'll be hard to find you as it is. No, I'll stay here by the well. Tasso gripped the takeoff switch, running her fingers over the smooth metal. A beautiful ship, Major. Well built. I admire your workmanship. You people have always done good work. You build fine things. Your work, your creations are your greatest achievement. Give me the pistol, Hendricks said impatiently, holding out his hand. He struggled to his feet. Goodbye, Major. Tasso tossed the pistol past Hendricks. The pistol clattered against the ground, bouncing and rolling away. Hendricks hurried after it. He bent down, snatching it up. The hatch of the ship clanged shut. The bolts fell into place. Hendricks made his way back. The inner door was being sealed. He raised the pistol unsteadily. There was a shattering roar. The ship burst up from its metal cage, fusing the mesh behind it. Hendricks cringed, pulling back. The ship shot up into the rolling clouds of ash, disappearing into the sky. Hendricks stood watching a long time, until even the streamer had dissipated. Nothing stirred. The morning air was chill and silent. He began to walk aimlessly back the way they had come. Better to keep moving around. It would be a long time before help came, if it came at all. He searched his pockets until he found a packet of cigarettes. He lit one grimly. They had all wanted cigarettes from him, but cigarettes were scarce. A lizard slithered by him through the ash. He halted, rigid. The lizard disappeared. Above, the sun rose higher in the sky. Some flies landed on a flat rock to one side of him. Hendricks kicked at them with his foot. It was getting hot. Sweat trickled down his face into his collar. His mouth was dry. Presently he stopped walking and sat down on some debris. He unfastened his medicine kit and swallowed a few narcotic capsules. He looked around him. Where was he? Something lay ahead, stretched out on the ground, silent and unmoving. Hendrix drew his gun quickly. It looked like a man. Then he remembered. It was the remains of Klaus, the second variety, where Tasso had blasted him. He could see wheels and relays and metal parts strewn around on the ash, glittering and sparkling in the sunlight. Hendrix got to his feet and walked over. He nudged the inert form with his foot, turning it over a little. He could see the metal hull, the aluminium ribs and struts. More wiring fell out, like viscera. Heaps of wiring, switches and relays, endless motors and rods. He bent down. The brain cage had been smashed by the fall. The artificial brain was visible. He gazed at it. A maze of circuits, miniature tubes, wires as fine as hair. He touched the brain cage. It swung aside. The type plate was visible. Hendrix studied the plate and blanched. IV-V 45. For a long time, he stared at the plate. Fourth variety, not the second. They had been wrong. There were more types, not just 3, many more perhaps, at least 4. And Klaus wasn't the second variety. But if Klaus wasn't the second variety... Suddenly he tensed. Something was coming, walking through the ash beyond the hill. What was it? He strained to see. Figures coming slowly along, making their way through the ash, coming toward him. Hendrix crouched quickly, raising his gun. Sweat dripped down into his eyes. He fought down rising panic as the figures neared. The first was a David. The David saw him and increased its pace. The other hurried behind it. A second David, a third, 3 Davids all alike coming toward him silently, without expression, their thin legs rising and falling, clutching their teddy bears. He aimed and fired. The first 2 Davids dissolved into particles. The third came on, and the figure behind it, climbing silently toward him across the grey ash. A wounded soldier, towering over the David, and behind the wounded soldier came 2 Tassos, walking side by side. Heavy belt, Russian army pants, shirt, long hair. The familiar figure, as he had seen her only a little while before, sitting in the pressure seat of the ship. 2 slim, silent figures, both identical. They were very near. The David bent down suddenly, dropping its teddy bear. The bear raced across the ground. Automatically, Hendrix's fingers tightened around the trigger. The bear was gone, dissolved into mist. The 2 Tasso types moved on, expressionless, walking side by side through the grey ash. When they were almost to him, Hendrix raised the pistol waist high and fired. The 2 Tassos dissolved, but already a new group was starting up the rise, 5 or 6 Tassos, all identical, a line of them coming rapidly toward him. And he had given her the ship and the signal code. Because of him, she was on her way to the moon base. He had made it possible. He had been right about the bomb after all. It had been designed with knowledge of the other types, the David type and the wounded soldier type, and the Klaus type. Not designed by human beings. It had been designed by one of the underground factories apart from all other human contact. The line of Tassos came up to him. Hendricks braced himself, watching them calmly. The familiar face, the belt, the heavy shirt, the bomb carefully in place. The bomb. As the Tassos reached for him, a last ironic thought drifted through Hendricks's mind. He felt a little better thinking about it. The bomb, made by the second variety to destroy the other varieties, made for that end alone. They were already beginning to design weapons to use against each other.